The purpose of this training is to understand T3C, which stands for Texas Child-Centered Care, for basic child care operations and emergency shelters like our agency, the Children's Aid Society. Our training objectives. By the end of this training, staff will understand the purpose of TC3 operations noted in the blueprint, identify staff responsibilities under TC3, apply trauma-informed care in our daily operations, understand documentation and reporting expectations, and maintaining DFPS and SCC compliance. What is T3C? Texas Child-Centered Care. Child Protective Services, or DFPS, was under some revisions or changes, and this is part of that process. And so they have changed some of the operating policies and procedures that we need to follow to better meet the needs of the children. Things that have changed are like staff ratios, some of the expectations of care that we offer the kids, some of the staffing and infrastructure that we offer to help do our support services to the kids have changed. And so, of course, having a treatment model, which is our TBRI, that was part of the changes through the TC3 model. And so basically it's a framework for safe trauma-informed care. It applies to basic child care operations like ourselves, emergency shelters. It aligns with both minimum standards and SSCC requirements. And it's required for consistent, accountable care. It gives us all one method of interacting with the children that's more consistent and measurable and observable. The basics of the TC3 blueprint. Why these matter for basic child care centers or child care operations like us? Well, the Texas Code rule changes that are designed to reduce compliancy risk. So that's when we are doing what we say we're supposed to be doing. So it's straightforward and up to date. There's less gray area for interpretation on the rules that we need to follow. So that helps us towards more compliance within state and federal regulations. It improves child safety and well-being. With these targeted rule updates, it's talking about, not using a restraint, using trauma-informed approaches, using the TBRI treatment model, offering more rewards for youth, targeting like recreation, daily life skills, PAL classes for older youth. Also making sure that kids feel valued and kids feel, like we talked about earlier, loved and a sense of belonging or cared for. It also supports centers and high quality operations by aligning standards with current expectation, statutories, and mandates. And so our agency has to follow the guidelines as presented by the state of Texas. In addition to that, we also follow guidelines that are supplied by the federal government on how we need to work with children. And so they're clearly defining how our role is to engage and interact with children as much as it is to engage and interact with their care providers through the state, like SSCC, DFPS, and keeping people informed of what's going on with their case. And also enhancing some trust within their families, giving the youth's families clearer communication requirements so we can make sure that their families are up to date with what's going on with their kids as well. That's why we have the supervised phone calls and we let parents know when things are going on with their kiddos. Taken together, these benefits help children and child care center operations like ourselves operate more effectively in a way that prioritizes safety, compliance, and quality of care. With safety, of course, making sure that kids are not self-harming, not running away, that they're not being bullied while they're in care, and that they have a voice and a choice. Compliance, making sure that we are providing what we say we're going to be providing with our meals, our snacks, our quality, hygiene items, toys, clothing, school supplies, all the things that the kids need. We're going to be getting those things met, as well, and things that are going to enrich their lives with quality. So like having them be able to participate in sports or Boy Scouts or girls clubs and choir and band and all these different things, making sure that kids have a quality life, in addition to being able to do those things in a school setting or an aftercare school setting, being able to do those things here in the shelter, having things that are not just warehousing a kid, but offering the kiddos that quality of care. So we're not just going outside to play and just standing around and watching them just do the same thing over and over, or the same thing in the building. They're not just watching television nonstop. They're not playing video games nonstop. They're not just free playing in the living room with no adult guidance. That's what quality of care means. That means we're interacting with the kids. We're being fully present with them. We're having the integrity to be fully engaged within our group to help teach them new board games and teach them life skills, and to work with them on how to learn how to ride a bike and learn how to eat healthy and take care of our bodies the way that they needed to be taken care of, from just simple things like personal grooming, like brushing their teeth, getting ready for bed, getting adequate sleep, getting adequate nutrition, taking a shower, and learning how to make a bed, put away our toys, doing laundry. So the TC3 blueprint is all inclusive of a multifaceted measurement of things to help make the children's lives better. But the core things are safety, compliance, and quality of care. Why T3C matters. It protects children and youth, especially those in foster care settings. It prevents re-traumatization of youth from a foster care setting. Re-traumatization is where young people are actually experiencing additional trauma and or abuse after their initial removal. It protects staff and the operation. It supports successful licensing inspections by holding us more accountable. Youth in emergency shelters. Youth may experience crisis or displacement from their original home and or from foster care if they've went from one facility to another, trauma or loss. They can actually lose a loved one, but in addition to losing a loved one, when a youth is removed in foster care, they also suffer trauma and loss when they are removed from their school setting, their friends, their church, their sports and social organizations they've participated with, the loss of their home, the loss of their relatives, the loss of their pets. So children actually in foster care experience a lot of loss. Emotional or behavioral escalation. Sometimes youth who are depressed or scared can react in ways that are outside the norm. They can be aggressive, or they can struggle with regulating their own behavior. Often youth who leave and go into the foster care system have a fear or mistrust of adults that they're exposed to, because their adults frequently change, and they are so new to the environment that they don't really know what to expect. Some children have been exposed to multiple levels of trauma before coming to us, and so many of the adults that they were exposed to were dangerous and caused them to be fearful. So we have to keep that in mind as well. T3C ensures care is safe, structured, and respectful. So what does this look like? Core T3C expectations. The expectations are just like the picture down below. You see that cute little boy with a smile. And it says in the picture, every child deserves to grow up feeling safe and loved. That's really what TC3 is wanting, children to feel safe and loved. That's what our agency wants, children to feel safe and loved. When we hire people, we go through multiple trainings, but some of them are like trauma-informed care and TBRI. TBRI is that trust-based relationship intervention, which talks about kiddos having felt safety. And felt safety is about feeling safe not only physically, mentally, emotionally. So we want kiddos to feel safe and feel as though they belong within our agency. So that priority there, that expectation there, number one, safety is always the priority. That is safety physically, mentally, and emotionally with our kiddos. So how do we achieve that? We achieve that by making sure that our shelter is picked up, well organized, and neat, that we are preventing individuals from being aggressive and or violent by intervening early. That's why we break our kids down into smaller groups. We have group leaders who are supposed to be actively involved with the kiddos, playing with them, being part of their day. And so whenever a group leader is with somebody, they're making the kids their priority. In addition to that, that makes a young person feel as though they belong, they have positive feedback, and they also get co-regulation when a staff member is with them directly. So you can actually be preventative to prevent any kind of physical dangers by being proactive and intervening early when you see that kids have issues. That helps keep everyone physically safe. Now, emotionally, kiddos are going to be like, oh my goodness, I can depend on these staff people to be here for me, and I can depend on these staff people to help me and my peers work out disagreements. And so we can do things a little bit better and share better and learn to negotiate privileges and rewards and things like that better within the day. They can have some input into their day, just like with activities and things that they do. So safety being a priority, we've got to take in terms of all the areas that we can make kids feel safe, like I said, mentally, emotionally, and physically. We've got to be consistent across all shifts. And so what does that mean? That means we all follow the same rules. We all do TBRI as we were trained to do TBRI. We all understand that we're a non-restraint facility and we don't do restraints. We all understand that when we're a part of a group, we're with our group, we're active with our group, we eat with our group, we sit with our group, we play with our group. Everything is a group experience. So following schedules and guidelines too, letting kids know that we're going to transition from one activity to another, giving them those transitional warnings and things like that. If we're following schedules, giving transitional warnings, using the TBRI, like the playful engagement, being connected to young people, with the structured engagement, giving the choices and also the compromises, and also doing the calming engagement, helping kiddos use our calming corner and helping young people learn how to self-regulate themselves through our ability to co-regulate with them. So when a kid needs to go to the calming corner, somebody goes with them and shows them how to use the calming corner. Somebody's there for them to provide the supervision that they need. That consistency across all shifts is very, very, very important. Trauma-informed responses. And so trauma-informed responses are doing that ideal response, that within 3 seconds, we're going to respond to that child. We're going to keep that child in close proximity with good visual monitoring of what's going on with that situation. And we're going to be, direct with the kiddos. We're going to be efficient with our use of language with the kiddos. And we're going to work with them to identify the stressor that they're experiencing. Now, sometimes that means being mindful of the basic human needs that they have that could be having them to be dysregulated, such as are they hungry? Are they thirsty? Are they tired? Did they have a bad day at school? Did they have a bad day at visitation? Did something go wrong? Is somebody bullying them within the shelter? Do they feel ignored? The one thing that staff don't realize is kids will act out and get defiant and sometimes dysregulated if other children are bullying them, or also if staff are not paying attention to them, or they're being disregarded or ignored. And so we need to make sure that we're being mindful to give all the children the same love and care that we give to each individual child. Accountability at every level. We have to own our actions. The kids need to be aware of what is expected of us just as much as what we expect of them. The kids know that they have the right to complain if something is not fair and just, And if they feel unsafe, we have an open door policy. And so with accountability, it means all staff are working together as a team. It means staff are clocking in, they're not playing on their phones, they are attentive to the kids' needs, and they're working together as a team to make sure that the kids' day is not only balanced and enriched, but also stress-free. And we do that by being fully prepared. And so we do that by making sure that we co-coordinate with our other employees the different activities we do with the kids throughout the day, whether we're doing arts and crafts or outdoor play or going on an outing or watching a movie or doing some other type of event within this shelter. We take ownership of that and we help plan those activities. We don't just come in and just go to the playground and do playground free time, because that's not always fun. Sometimes you need those planned activities because kids don't know how to plan activities. Same thing within the building. It's okay to use the centers, but you don't want to spend 30 minutes in a center. You've got to work with the kiddos, play with the kiddos, and make it meaningful. So having that sense of accountability that the kids' day is based on how much effort we're giving to make sure that their day is balanced and that they feel safe. When kids are disrupted, if you get to the ability to where you can talk to them and say, hey, what's going on? Oftentimes they feel that there's no structure, it's chaotic, and they're being ignored, or their needs are not being met. So that's the big thing with accountability, is every staff member at every level need to be accountable. And then having accurate documentation. If it's not recorded, it didn't happen. That's what we always say. And so not only is it important to do every form of documentation, whether we're getting a phone call about an intake on a kid and writing everything down, or we're actually doing an intake of a child and we're completing that intake paperwork, making sure that the children sign where they're supposed to sign, the care providers are like the SSCC or DFPS, whoever's bringing the child to us, does their portion of the paperwork, and that we fill out that portion of our paperwork thoroughly. That includes things like client log notes and also information regarding the kiddos' possession sheets and things like that. And so possession sheets, inventory sheets, phone logs, documenting appointments, documenting school, documenting when a child is upset, documenting a child when they're happy, making sure not to diagnose the children. That's very important because we don't do diagnosis. So we're merely documenting things that we can physically observe. Incident reports are very important, and who to contact when it's a serious incident or a minor incident, and what that looks like. And so all forms of documentation are important, whether we're just tracking clothes, tracking phone calls, or tracking our shift, and making sure that we sign our shift notes. That's very important, and making sure that our handwriting is legible is also very important. So accurate documentation is very key to understanding what's going on with the kid here in our shelter, and it helps our case managers do their job to adequately record what's going on with a young person in our care. Governance and oversight. We have to understand our clear leadership structure. We do have our organizational chart posted. The Children's Aid Society is actually governed by a board of directors who then work directly with the executive director, and that would be Sheila Catron. She is also working as our treatment director to help with TBRI training, so you've already met her during TBRI training. We also have a program director, which is Lisa. Lisa works to establish a lot of programmatic structure, so she helps with intake and placement. So does Sheila with the intake and placement. They also do quality control of the agency, so they're looking at how the staff function with the children, and then also how things are going from a systematic approach within the agency. We have Ms. Rhonda, who helps with training, documentation, and also with kiddos' needs within the shelter during the day shift. We have, of course, both of our case managers, Julie for the children's home and Kelly Way for the teen shelter, with meeting those cross-system coordinated needs of the kiddos through school and medical appointments and the different things that they might have to participate in, whether it's PAL or court or visitation or some type of requirement that the SSCC or DFPS need us to handle for the kids' needs. They set up CANS assessments and visitation and counseling and all those different types of appointments, medication reviews. And they also are the ones who look at all of our notes and all of our documentation and turn that notes into additional data that goes into different forms, like our plans of service for the kids, and then also goes into intake, paperwork reviews, and then discharge summaries. So it's important that we do our paperwork and get our paperwork into them in a timely fashion. We also have Nicole. Nicole is a lead supervisor, and she assists with outreach with the shelter and promoting the shelter. Of course, so does Rhonda, Sheila, and Lisa. Sometimes Kelly and Julie do that. But Nicole is more in charge of scheduling, group assignments, and she helps with activities planning and recreational planning of the kiddos. She kind of monitors the homework and things like that to ensure that we're doing our adequate paperwork effectively. We also have direct care staff supervisors. Right now we have April, who works 11 to 7. She's making sure staff stay awake on their shift and that we're doing the supervision and oversight that needs to be done to keep the kids safe on that night shift. Of course, we have our support staff, and support staff are like our cooks, our housekeepers, our laundry, our clothing shed staff, people who help keep the agency supportive of not only the youth but the staff as well. And then we have an accounting staff, which is Miss Erin, and Erin is the one who does or deals with billing and cost reporting and claims, and also helps with payroll. And our insurances and things like that. And so different staff have different responsibilities, and that just kind of helps you understand our organizational chart. If you have any questions regarding that, you can always ask me about that, or one of the support staff that I just mentioned. And so many of our team serves together to work together for oversight to ensure compliance, since we do get audited by DFPS licensing. Licensing can come in any time and monitor what we do, as well as the SSCC. So we have to engage and empower. And so usually they do a site visit, and they will inspect the shelter to make sure we're clean and organized and things are like they should be. That's like things that are not safe or locked away. And then also that our, water gets hot enough and it's clean and fresh, and, the kitchen is clean and fresh, and we've had inspections, as well as just having the mattress protectors on the pillowcases and on the mattresses. They check for that. They also check medication log books, client log notes to make sure they've been signed off on by staff. And so they do look at paperwork, and they also visit with the children, and they look at our menus. And so they look at a lot of different things during oversight to make sure we meet compliance. Whenever we find an issue where we were not meeting compliance, we usually get technical support, and then we work with staff during a training process to resolve that matter. Staff roles and responsibilities. Every staff member is responsible for the same thing really here: following policy that we all read and were trained on, maintaining supervision of the youth, making sure that we monitor the kids and kids aren't just wandering the halls by themselves or going places unmonitored. Using approved discipline methods. Well, what are our discipline methods? Our goal is not to punish. We've talked about that. With TBRI, we're not here to punish the kids. We're not here to restrict their lives and make their lives, like a military or prison setting. Our goal is to have them learn TBRI, to teach them self-regulation through co-regulation, to have them on our reward system, which is our token system, to where they can earn a token for having a good shift. They would earn 1 token per shift per day, so that would be a total of 3 tokens per day. It's important that staff talk to them about their tokens, and at the end of the shift you let them know, you did such a great job today, you earned a token with me. And isn't it going to be exciting to go to the token room on Saturday to be able to pick something that you would like to purchase or save up to purchase? So that's something that's very, very important in doing with the kiddos, with discipline. Remember, we don't do timeout. We don't take kids' toys away. We don't send kids to early bedtime. Those are all things that are not allowed. We don't do restraints. Those are all not allowed. We have time in. We have talking it through. We are doing our connective engagement. We are doing our playful engagement. We are doing our structured engagement. And we are doing our calming engagement. The most important thing that we can do is maintain that supervision within our group. So we are physically present, mentally present, emotionally present for the youth, so we can be preventative when we see an issue come up, so we don't have to have a discipline reason. If we are actively working with kiddos to correct them in a positive way with a calm voice and positive explanations of why we are telling them that we need to change these behaviors, it's going to help them learn better. Also offering those redos, choices, and compromises to help kids have some power and some decision making in their lives. That's very important as well. Reporting incidents immediately, especially significant incidents, like if a kid really breaks an arm, hits their head or their neck or their face in any way, there's a big fall or something like that. Tiny little incidents need to still have an incident report form, but severe incidents like running away or threatening suicide or threatening to harm somebody else, those kind of things that we need to work through would have a serious incident report, and we would have to do proper documentation on that. Sometimes it means calling it into licensing, sometimes it doesn't, and sometimes we just have to work with the kiddos, especially if it's a suicide threat or a threat of harming somebody else, or a threat of harming property. We'll do an incident report, but sometimes talking them through that, sometimes they're just blowing things out of proportion and it's not a severe thing. So we just need to make sure that we are adequately reporting what's really going on and that it's not over exaggerated. Making sure that we also notify the right people involved on the incident reports. If you're looking at incident report form, you're going to see that we have to notify the executive director, program director, other supervisory people, case managers. Sometimes we notify the to engage worker or the empower worker, sometimes licensing contracts. So different people we might have to notify based on what type of incident had occurred. The most important thing is integrity here. Integrity is doing the right thing when no one is watching. So that means an employee with integrity is going to follow our policies whether I'm watching or not, whether I'm on the property or not. They are going to maintain supervision with the kids, not because I'm watching them and they need to do it because I'm watching them or an admin team staff member is watching them. They're doing it because it's the right thing to do. Using appropriate discipline methods, not yelling and threatening the children, not trying to take their stuff away, not punishing them in any way, but trying to provide co-regulation, self-regulation, rewards, and privileges to change behavior. That's integrity. That's doing the right thing. Being an active member of that group with the kiddo and playing with that kiddo. And when you see kiddos not sharing, you work with kiddos to learn the concept of sharing and what that looks like. So that is part of that integrity guideline. Having integrity is a moral characteristic that makes you a good person. And so we want all our staff to have great integrity. And so that's an important factor for our staff. Trauma-informed care. All behavior is communication. We've said that. All behavior has meaning. If a child is misbehaving, what is that telling you? What's going on? Are they hungry? Are they thirsty? Are they tired? Is somebody bullying them? Did they get bad news today? Did somebody treat them poorly and that's making them react? Are they being ignored? Are they bored? What is going on with them? Are their medications not working? Did they not sleep well? Their behavior has communication. It has a meaning. We need to figure out what that meaning is. And it's specific to each child and it's specific to each situation. So it changes from day to day, from minute to minute. Youth may not react from a survival mode. Some do and some don't. So some kids are in that fight, flight, or freeze mode. Some kids are not. Some kids are able to be in function mode and they can hide it well. Staff must, more than anything, remain calm. That is our biggest thing we can do to help the kiddos, is we have to remain calm. We have to use respectful language, not hurtful language, not harsh language. We need to watch our tone. Are we screaming at the child? Are we talking to them in a kind, voice. Remember, with TBRI, we don't raise our voices. Our voices get a little bit deeper and we talk a little bit slower. But otherwise, we're talking in a higher pitched, happier, almost kindergarten level sunshine voice. Remember, we talked about that during TBRI. We're not going to get into power struggles with the kiddos. If you're getting into a power or struggle with the kiddos where it's my way or the highway, or you're doing kind of an arguing thing back and forth, that's not helpful for the kids, and it's not helpful for us as an agency or as staff, because it puts us in conflict with the kids. And so we need to do what the picture's showing there. Connect with the kids. How do we connect with them? We're active with our group members. We sit with them, we play with them, we're part of their day. We are playful and encouraging. What about empowerment? How are we empowering to them? We recognize when they might be hungry or thirsty or tired, and we talk them through those needs. With empowerment, we're also using some of our calming center things like fidget toys or breathing exercises and taking walks and things along those lines. When we get into correcting, that's where we're talking about doing that structured engagement, where we're doing two choices, one or two choices, both that are positive in a win-win situation, not a win-lose situation, and also offering those compromises to kind of help kids have some choice and a voice in their care within the agency. So being a trauma-informed staff is key to the success of not only TC3, but the agency and to you as a staff member. It makes your shift run smooth. It makes your shift run easier because you are showing that compassion and empathetic, nurturing care to the kiddo, and then they are responding back to that by being more cooperative and being more willing to learn and being more able to co-regulate their emotions better. Safety and supervision. Active supervision at all times. Never do we leave the children alone. Never do we let the children just roam loose in the building alone. Never do we send them outside alone. The children must have active supervision at all times. If they're in the bedroom, we're sitting outside that hallway. So we got to make sure that when kiddos need to go to the room to get something, we go with them or we take our group and go with them. It just depends on what we need to do to make sure that we are providing adequate supervision of the kiddos. That keeps kids from getting in trouble. That means kids are not messing with other people's property, and they're also not plotting secret rendezvous or things like that that are going to wind up getting them in trouble. We got to remember that some of our bedroom halls have exit doors in them. And so we also have things in art rooms and things like that that the children don't need to have access to. You got to be careful of things that children can hurt themselves with. So if we're actively supervising them at all times, we wouldn't have that issue. Line of sight monitoring. Line of sight monitoring, especially for children who are being difficult, that means that I cannot take my eyes off that kiddo unless they're going to the restroom. So literally that means line of sight. You do not break a visual contact with that youth until the safety problem has gone away. And so literally when a kid is in that particular situation and they will have to go to the bathroom, we want to make sure they go in and come out. We want to make sure that we go in before they go in to make sure there's nothing in the bathroom that they've put in there that they could harm themselves with in any way. So line of sight monitoring are those kiddos who are really dysregulated and that need help monitoring them because they've become a danger to themselves or others. Regulating our head counts is also very important. We got to count the kids. You got to know how many kids that you have in your group and being able to monitor your group. But everyone, especially when we're going on an outing or we're going somewhere in the vehicle, we have to make sure that we count the kids going to the event and we count the kids getting into the van to come home, and we count the kids once we're in the building because we don't want to leave a kid in a hot car. We don't want to leave a kid behind from an outing and then they're left without supervision. So making sure that we count our kids and know where they are at all times. Awake overnight supervision is important. We do not have sleeping staff ever, so none of our staff are allowed to sleep at any time. And so we are constantly making sure that we do our bed checks, somewhere between a 5, 10, and 15-minute increment, 15 minutes being the longest amount of time. And we document our bed checks effectively. So if I'm doing a bed check at 12:09 and then I do a bed check, let's say at 12:22, I write those times down there. It doesn't have to be the exact thing like 11 o'clock, 11:15, 11, or 12, 12:30. You don't have to do it to where it's a whole number increment, because your life's not going to work out that way. You're not going to totally always be able to do things in whole number increments. So do it on the actual physical time that your phone or watch says, so that way you're tracking things correctly. And then teamwork of care. Safety and supervision only work if we have a teamwork of care. There is no I in team. Did you notice that spelled out there for us? There is no letter I in team. And so if we are not communicating with our coworkers effectively as a group, or noticing when they need help, sometimes a coworker feels self-conscious and they won't ask for help, and they clearly are losing it and not able to maintain their group. They need help. Or if you see a coworker who's just chronically not able to handle their group, that's something that we need to know as administrators. You need to report to administrative staff and say, hey, this person wanders off, or this person doesn't monitor their group, or this person, just lets the kids do whatever they want. That is something that we can't have. We have to have staff who are accountable, those people with integrity, those people who want to do the right thing. And that goes from any position, not just direct care staff. It goes down to, cooking, housekeeping, laundry, case management, administrative team, everybody. We all have to care about the agency itself, the kids that we serve, and the quality of care we give. And so being an active team member is important. So sometimes you might have a supervisor say, hey, I need you to do this differently. They're not personally attacking you. They're trying to get you to meet the requirements of care that we have set our standards at. Remember me telling you in TBRI we set the bar low and move it high? Well, for staff, we don't set the bar low. We're not going to do that. We're going to do that for the kids, set the bar low and take it high. With staff, we've got to set that bar high and keep it high. So please understand, if an administrative team member or another coworker catches you doing something out of line and they bring that to your attention, it's not a personal attack. It's trying to get you on the correct page where you need to be doing the right form of care that you need to be doing, because safety and supervision are very important for us as an agency and for TC3. What are the behavior supports under T3C? Well, our treatment model is TBRI. So let's go ahead and look at the picture first. Remember, through TBRI, we have our voice quality is very, very important. Our personal eye contact is important. Are you scowling, or do you have warm eyes, warm, welcoming eyes? Behavior matching, like if they're sitting down, you're sitting down. If they're walking, you're walking. If they're standing, you're standing, but you're looking directly at them. Your body is pointed towards them. Offering kind of that healthy touch if they want that, asking if they need a hug, giving a pat on the back. Especially with little ones or toddlers, you can comfort them and pat them on the back, pick up a baby or pick up a toddler, but we're not just going to carry them around. They can sit beside us like big boys and girls do, because we want them to learn independence. We don't want to just teach them that we can carry them around all the time just to make them avoid independence. Our voice quality is very important. Being in that playful engagement, that big orange circle there, playful engagement, having that lightness, that flutter in our voice, that happiness. Remember that rhythmic motion to our voice, to where we're not being stern or over demanding or too critical or too negative. We want to keep that positive, healthy tone. Those are very, very important with TBRI. So the behavior supports under TC3, they want us to use that TBRI because it's important. But we also never, ever use a restraint here. Now, a restraint is going to be anything to hold the child down. We're not holding kids down ever. We're not dragging kids from one place to another by their arm. Those are all forms of restraint. The only time we would do anything where we were to pick a child up or get a child down is we verbalize that to them. Oh my goodness, do you need help off the playground? Oh my goodness, would you like to hold my hand as we cross the street? Those are not restraints. Those are guided safety measures. But if a kid's throwing a fit and mad and you're then just grabbing them, that is a restraint, because you've grabbed them, they're throwing a fit, they're misbehaving, and you're grabbing them rather than trying to do it as a protective measure. It's using good judgment. We're not going to use any type of touch to necessarily stop an anger fit. If they're throwing things, this, that, and the other, we're not going to grab them and hold them or anything like that, because we don't do that. We use no forms of restraint here. We're not even going to use our high chairs or our playpens or things like that we have for our toddlers. We're not going to use those as a form of restraint either. That's why we don't send kids to their room to make them feel isolated, and we don't put them in timeout where they're isolated somewhere. We don't use those things at all. We use time in, we use close proximity where they can sit by me and talk to me about their day, and we also use playful engagement, using that structured engagement, using that calming engagement to try to work with kiddos to give them the behavior supports they need. Using our treatment model, TBRI, of course, we're going to go through and teach kids how to use those calming engagement strategies like breathing techniques, counting to 10 slowly, focusing on a different object, or going to one of our calming centers and doing some of the repetitive different motions in there. We also have fidget toys and things that are sensory stimulus and things like that that are calming for kids to use. Weighted blankets and things along those lines as well. Our biggest thing that we need to do is de-escalation. And so de-escalation is our first response. So if we're playing with our group and kids are starting to argue over something, we want to step in immediately. It shouldn't get to the point where they're fighting over an object. They shouldn't be tugging over a doll because we were there in the first place. If we were there present in the first place and we saw that they were having a struggle sharing, we could intervene initially and say, okay, Sarah, I saw that you had that toy for 5 minutes. Let's go ahead and practice sharing. Can you tell me what sharing means? And then we're going to take turns with that. So I'm going to put a timer on and we're going to take turns, and each one of us get 5 minutes with that particular toy. So talking to the kids about sharing and talking to the kids about how to share and how to say I'm sorry when they were out of control is very important. And we need to say I'm sorry if we're out of control, using those things as a first response. Using verbal redirection, we want to give that playful engagement, that we want to offer some choices that are win-win, not my way or the highway or all or none thinking. And we also want to sometimes use it as a distraction to kiddos, and so letting them know that, I'm sorry we can't do that right now, but we might be able to do it in 20 minutes. And if we do that, maybe you can be the line leader when it's your turn to go. That kind of verbal redirection, acknowledging that sometimes we can't change things. Like, we're going to have to eat dinner, so we can't do that right now. But once we're done with dinner and we clean up from the dinner space, then it's time to go outside and play. Then you could be the line leader to go outside and play for me. And then also acknowledging when kiddos follow those rules and saying thank you so much for calming yourself down, and thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much for sharing, and thank you so much for being a good team player on this board game or activity or sports or whatever they're doing. Acknowledging good behavior is very important. Oftentimes kiddos only get negative feedback when they have negative behaviors. They don't get positive feedback for positive behaviors. It's important to provide choices when possible. I talk to the staff about not always playing Uno or not always just doing center time. And so offering choices like, hey, we're going to go to center time, but I notice we always play the baby center. What other center could we play in today? What could we get out of the closet to play with that would be different so we can do something new today? Same thing with games in the game room. Letting kids have that opportunity to pick a game. It doesn't have to be staff's choice every time. And oftentimes what you'll get is you'll get one kid who wants to be the primary decision maker for the group, and that's not fair either. You should have enough for everyone to have an opportunity to lead, and then take turns doing each one of those activities. Most importantly, we need to maintain dignity and respect of our kiddos. That's by making them feel like a human being. We don't want them to feel as though they don't belong in our environment, and we know that their choices in life are limited. So we want to give them more opportunities to lead and to choose and to make healthy decisions for themselves every day. And again, reminding them of our token system, reminding them of things they can earn, and reminding them of things that they can work towards as a goal, not things that you can punish them for or take away from them. So those things that are negative, like punishments, restrictions, and things like those types of things, those are not behavior supports. Those are behavior suppressors. And so we want behavior supports that encourage positive behavior. So what are our prohibited practices? Things that are not allowed. Not allowed. Staff may not use corporal punishment. humiliation or shaming, threats or intimidation, or threats of withholding food, sleep, or basic needs. These behaviors are prohibited and not allowed. Intakes and placement. What does that look like? Well, with intakes and placement, we want to make sure kids feel welcome, especially when they're new to our building. So we need to greet them at the door with warmth and kindness. We always want to think about safety first. That's over there on the left there. And when we think of safety first, we always want to make sure that we pull all of the kids' things to the side. So once we're done with the immediate intake and assessment, we can go through each one of their personal items, not only to record it on our possession sheet, but also to make sure they don't have anything they shouldn't have access to. That's very important. So what are the needs that we have? Immediate safety assessment. So we're also asking the child on our intake paperwork, are there any safety concerns? We're asking the SSCC workers or the DFPS workers, does this child have any history of running away, aggression, suicidal history? Have there been any history of child molestation? Should we have a Form A that we need to review? Also, we need to talk to the kiddo to make sure that they don't have any of these issues going on. So sometimes they may come in and they may say something, like, I've really been thinking about killing myself and dying. Well, that's something during an intake that we really, really need to address immediately, because they may or may not be appropriate for our program. They may have to go to like Red River Hospital or the state hospital or somewhere for evaluation prior to coming here. Usually during an intake, as long as it's been predetermined intake, like with the SSCC or the DFPS, we've been able to make arrangements for that kid to come in, so we have a lot more history on that kid before they get here. It's when the police bring children in, or children just come and knock on the door, that we have less information. So it's important to gather that information, so we're making sure that we meet the safety needs of that child and of the agency at the same time. Understanding we need to review the referral information that you take down in that intake. So when you're talking to an intake and placement call, you're getting all that data. Does the kid have a history of running away, self-harm, hurting others, aggression, violence, drug or alcohol addiction? Any of those things that we might need to be concerned about. And when we get the intakes, we're able to go into an email and review the child's Common App, sometimes their CANS assessment, and sometimes some psychologicals and things like that. So we have that historical paperwork that we can fall back on to assess their behaviors. We also address health or mental health needs of the youth. We want to make sure that any kid who needs crisis counseling or immediate counseling, that we offer that to them, and we can get that scheduled fairly quickly through our case managers. If a child has a medical need, we would also get medical needs met. Usually if kids have been in some type of aggression where they were harmed before coming to our facility, they would have gone to an emergency room or a doctor's office to have that looked at prior to coming to see us. Finally, it's important to orient the youth to our shelter rules and routines. Taking that time to go over the shelter routines, rules, behavioral rules, discipline policy, things that we're allowed to do, not allowed to do, even going over the schedule, going over the routine that we follow, giving them a tour, letting them know how we have access to food and to drinks and to snacks and to meal times and to bath time and bedtime and where all of our toiletry is located, and also letting them know that we're here to meet needs if they have an unmet need, especially with clothing or toiletries, even toys, those kind of things. Making sure that they see our token room and they understand the token process and how that works as well. That's very important. Daily care expectations. Predictable routines are so important for the kids. They need to know what 7 to 3 looks like. They need to know what 3 to 11 looks like. They need to know what 11 to 7 looks like. So if they get that pattern down and they can trust that staff are going to follow it, then there is more predictability to their routine. So kiddos who have sensory processing disorder issues like autism, ADHD, depression, even OCD, anxiety disorders, things like that, they're going to know what's coming, so it's less stressful for them. Look over there to the left. Now this is not our actual schedule, it's just a schedule that I managed to put there. And so like if kids wake up at a certain time, it needs to happen all the time. Then they have free play, or they have do the next thing, brush your teeth, get red dress for the day, morning routine, eat breakfast, start to school or work, or read and play. What's going to happen there? Snack time, learning time, lunch with family or really lunch with us, nap time or quiet time, afternoon activities, daily screen time. We don't really have that. We have minimal screen time, so we have to be mindful of that as well. Dinner time, visitation would be like family time, bedtime, bath time routine, and like at bedtime, do we read the kids a book and things like that. So having clear rules that we all follow. Sometimes we can have a little flexibility in rules, but staff that try to buddy the kids and try not to follow the rules and let the kids have way more leeway than what they really should have with structure and guidelines are not really helpful. That's just as abusive as being as a mean person to the kid, because you're teaching them that rules don't matter and that you don't value their schedule. And so that's very important for the kids. You've got to have those clear rules and guidelines that we all follow together. Youth should have a voice and they should feel respected. We shouldn't taunt them or be sarcastic to them. We want them to feel as though they have an opinion and it matters to us and we care about their needs. Structure always creates safety, and so we want our shelter to have felt safety. We want it to feel safe emotionally, physically, and socially. We want to make sure that if we have total felt safety, that youth have that ultimate ability to thrive and grow as a young person and deal with their trauma. It helps yield resiliency. Okay, we're taking it back to reporting immediately situations. Injuries, any kind of injury, we need to report that immediately. We're going to do an incident report. We're also going to let a staff supervisor know, or an administrative team member, whoever's on call. If it's a significant, dangerous injury, then we need to immediately let the executive director know, program director, that kind of thing. And when a youth runs away, we also have to do some reporting. We're going to have to call the 1-800 number in and usually report that, but we're also going to have to call the police number to make sure that we report the kids as they run away. During your orientation process, you were shown how to do those two types of reports, a runaway report and a DFPS report of either abuse, neglect, or running away, or a serious incident. Allegations need to be reported immediately because we don't know what is the basis for those allegations. So it's important to know. So if a child says this staff member was mean to me, or this staff member was giving me extra presents and money, and this staff person let me play with their phone and told me that I could come to their house, we've got to make sure that we're looking out for the kids. And so sometimes allegations are true, and we've learned that in our some of our trainings that we did with DFPS, sometimes allegations are false. But we have to take everything at face value, and we want to report all allegations that are made to management so we can decipher if we need to take that to the next level for protection of the youth. Sometimes we have to contact law enforcement, specifically if a child reports abuse that we were not aware of, and we need to block parental contact with the youth. So if it was a law enforcement placement and the kid got here through Safe Place or the school or something like that, and then they say my dad's molesting me, but they don't have an open CPS case, and we have to tell their dad that they're at the shelter, and the dad says, hey, I'm coming to get my kid, we're going to have to block that and call 911 and have to have a protective measure put in place to block the parent from coming to get that kid, so we have time for DFPS to work out the case and to prioritize the case. Any form of any serious incident report, and that means, drug use, suicide, suicidal ideation, suicide threat, running away, self-harm, harms of threats to other people, anything like along those lines that would constitute as a serious incident, something we need to take seriously. You need to contact an administrator quickly, whether it be the program director, executive director, a lead supervisor, whoever's on call, so they can handle that immediately. You don't realize you don't have to contact all of us. Contacting one of us when you've actually gotten a live person on the phone and had that opportunity to talk to somebody, we immediately contact one another. We have a phone tree where we have a giant group capability of getting in touch with one another and updating all of us at one time. So you don't have to contact each and every single staff member that's on the admin team. Contacting one of us is like contacting all of us, just so you know. What are the documentation standards? Well, the most important thing is being accurate, being objective. You can't diagnose people because you don't have the proper training for that. So stating what you see, so-and-so was crying, so-and-so said they were sad, that type of thing. So having the facts, don't interpret anything for yourself, don't make things up. Keep it real, keep it accurate. Timely. We have to document things as they occur so we don't forget what's going on. It's too hard to document all your notes at the end of your shift. So it's important. I know 7 to 3 you can kind of document as you go. 3 to 11 you can kind of document as you go. Same thing for graveyard. It's the easiest thing on the night shift for documentation because you're not doing as many activities as we are with the kiddos on the 7 to 3 and 3 to 11. But making sure you record things accurately when they occur, at what time they occur, giving accurate information and also giving factual information, no opinions. And so you said they went to visitation and parents did not show up, and you said they felt sad afterwards. You don't have to say depressed because depression is actually a clinical term, but the kid said they were sad and crying, or it made them sad. If a youth said they were depressed, then you could put that in quotes. You stated they felt depressed because parents didn't come. And then that's a word that the kid actually used, and you put that in quotation marks. If it isn't documented, again, it didn't happen. So we need to document anytime we go on appointments, anytime there are changes in our behaviors that are significant. And we also want to document good things. Like if a youth is having a good day, document that. If a youth is having a creative day, document that. We don't have to just document negative things. We want to try to give a full visual account for that child's day. So making sure that we provide detailed notes as possible, and listing the different activities that the kid has experienced, whether we did, craft time, and we also, painted roses on canvases, and then we went outside and rode bikes, and then we came inside and did a workout video for 30 minutes, kind of documenting all the different things that happened in that kid's day is important us to be able to go back and reflect on things like that. Sometimes we've actually had to use some of those notes where like kids had talked to staff about things that had happened in the school setting that we didn't feel were conducive to learning and conducive to a child feeling safe. And so they documented some conversations about the child's experience in the school setting that we needed to address the next day. So making sure you have those clear notes that are very tangible and readable, that are factual with no opinions, and that have accurate information of who, when, where, why, and what. All those kind of characteristics that are important in gathering information on a kiddo. You could even do like, parent phone calls and things like that. The phone call lasted from this time to this time. The phone call went well, or the phone call didn't go well. The parent kept talking to the kid about their case, and I had to tell them to, stop doing that, because the parents really are not really supposed to be doing that, especially if the parent's trying to encourage the kid to recant about abuse or something like that. Staff communication is not only essential but crucial. When you get on shift, you got to read the board. Reading the board to see what's going on, and especially changes with appointments or things along those lines, that's going to be listed. Proper shift handoffs. What does that mean? It's shift to shift verbal communication, or verbal exchange of information. So 11 to 7, we'll talk to 7 to 3. 7 to 3, we'll talk to 3 to 11. 3 to 11, we'll talk to 11 to 7. Case managers may talk to any shift at any time. Same thing with administrators. They may talk to any shift at any given time. Some of the things that we're sharing are appointments, visitation, changes in school schedules, changes in appointments, changes in kids' behavior based on medication changes or things along those lines. That's the same thing that we're going into medication changes. If something has been added or subtracted to a kid's meds, it's important to share that information with a brand new shift because they haven't experienced that earlier. Sharing any safety concerns. If kids have been fighting, if one kid has, been not taking their medication and hiding it in their mouths or something like that, which is not safe. We can talk about that. If kids have been actively, picking sores or pulling their hair or biting themselves or doing anything that would be a safety concern. Again, there's threats of harming others, threats to harming ourselves, threats to running away. All those things should be shared from staff to staff so we can address that. And sometimes it needs to be shared with case managers so they can schedule additional mental health services to come in and evaluate the child or work with the child. Why are we doing all this verbal information share? Because it's important to keep the building safe. The only way we can keep the building safe and the kids safe is by sharing that information verbally. But we also need to share our safety concerns in notes. So we're going to have to document our behavioral patterns that we see. We're looking for how many good days does a kid have? How many bad days does a kid have? What time of day does that bad day always happen? If it happens around the same time, then we're seeing a pattern. We need to address that pattern. Maybe they need to eat earlier. Maybe they need to shower earlier. Maybe they're not getting enough sleep. Maybe they're getting too much sleep. I mean, there's a lot of different things that we can look at from a behavioral pattern on a kid and see if there is consistency with it. Sometimes you're going to only have behavioral disruptions right after visitation or before visitation. That says something a lot about that visitation. A big thing with our kiddos is we want to maintain confidentiality. Don't just sit and talk about the kids in front of the kids. And make sure that you, don't talk to other people about our kids because it's none of their business. We talked about that in our confidentiality policy. Emergency procedures. Medical emergencies, runaway protocols, law enforcement contact information, suicide threat attempt procedures, DERP, which is our Disaster Emergency Response Preparedness Plan, which is like bad weather, fire, or other, and notifying supervisors, so supervisor notification. Anytime we have a medical emergency, sometimes we need to call 911, especially if it's a child's having a bad reaction to medication or if a child had a fall, something tragic like that happened. Runaway protocols, we'd have to contact the administrators who would contact case managers who would contact caseworkers with To Engage and or DFPS or Empower. And we'd also have to call law enforcement to do a runaway status report, and we'd also have to call that into licensing. So there's a lot of things to do with runaway protocol. The big thing is that we try to not lose visual sight of the kids. So we follow the kid to the best of our ability without chasing them. We want to be verbally talking to them the whole time to try to encourage them to come back in and try to resolve the issue. Sometimes when kiddos are aggressive and just won't calm down, we might have to call in for law enforcement to help. You can't do that independently without a supervisor's permission. So you would be having to actively work on that and trying to calm the kid down, and then nothing has resolved the situation, so we'll have to call him back up and call in law enforcement. With a suicide threat or suicide attempt, we'd handle those two things differently. We'd definitely, with the threat, do the ask survey that we were trained on. Based on the survey, that would take us to the next tier of what we would do next. If it was a suicide attempt, there may be a situation where we're looking at doing a Red River review real quickly or a state hospital review. If a kid's trying to hurt themselves and we can't get the item away from them, it may be calling in 911 and calling in law enforcement to help us get a dangerous object away from a kiddo. But if we're locking up any form of rope or any form of belts or any form of scissors or things like that a kid could really harm themselves with, then we should feel safe enough that they're not going to do that. Disaster emergency response plan, we need to make sure that we know that how to evacuate the building in case of a fire, what to do in case of bad weather, where do we go, what do we do. You're trained on that through our plan that we read through orientation, and you're walked through that through an orientation, and sometimes we'll get to practice that during staff meetings. So if you are confused about that or you need a refresher training on DERP training, please let an administrator know and they'll walk you through that. And notifying a supervisor, anytime there's a problem with emergency procedures, you notify a supervisor immediately and give them insight, and they'll tell you the next steps of how to handle the situation. Understanding youth rights and confidentiality. That's very important. Confidentiality is the duty of all staff. It is the duty of all staff. It's providing privacy and dignity to our residents. It allows them to have access to a grievance process. So like if young people feel that their confidentiality has been violated, they can reach out to us through administration team, and we can talk to them about their right to privacy and confidentiality, and it could result in a staff member getting redirection, retraining, and or loss of their position if they were doing things that they should not be doing. Like, we do not take pictures of the kiddos, we do not post them on social media, we do not become friends with the kids on social media, we don't talk to our friends and family about them, we don't take pictures on our phones and then show it to friends and family. Those are all things that would be in violation of the youth rights and confidentiality, and they don't happen. It's not allowed. Freedom from retaliation. Anytime a youth reports some form of youth rights or confidentiality violations, or even if a staff reported it from another staff, I have a freedom from retaliation policy that literally, if a staff were to retaliate in anger because they got caught breaking confidentiality, they would lose their job immediately, because we don't do retaliatory behavior here. We're not going to argue and treat people disrespectfully based on them being honest about our inability to do our job and have integrity. So that's something to keep in mind, is that if you lose your job because you cannot protect the youth rights and their confidentiality, that is your choice that you are making to lose your job because you're not going to be an ethical person and follow the integrity of honoring these kids' rights. And also having a respectful treatment of a kiddo, not just from a confidentiality standpoint, but just giving them respectful treatment overall. And when we need to talk about a serious issue, we'll have to talk about it in the living room in front of God and everybody's, what they say, as the kids like to say. We need to be sure and talk about it where we're not in earshot of them right away. And that way they're not embarrassed. Monitoring and improvement. We do this through internal audits with continuous quality improvement surveys. And so we're looking at multiple things. We're looking at incident reports on kiddos. We're looking at staff training, and did that impact the situation? We're looking at group charts. We're looking to see if there's a correlation between incident reports and certain staff, to see if more staff have an inability to maintain the self-regulation of children than others. We're also looking at are certain activities enriching and others are not. We're looking at our nutritional program, the cleanliness of the shelter, the supplies we offer, the life skills we do, everything that we provide for the children, whether it's taking them to the doctor, getting counseling, medication reviews, even the CANS assessments. We have to look at everyone's interaction with the kiddo and all the services we offer, and constantly do an internal audit to see if those things are best serving the children. Why do we do that for TC3? Because it helps us do a better job overall. How do we get evaluated as an agency? We get evaluated through licensing inspections. Sometimes that's through DFPS through actual licensing. Sometimes it's through DFPS through contracts. Sometimes it's through RHY through the federal government for our federal program. And then sometimes it's through our providers through the SSCC, like we have to Engage and Empower. So what are they looking at? They're looking at supervision of the children, ratios, the health and safety of the shelter, and they're also looking at paperwork from an HR standpoint with personnel files, staff attending staff meetings, trainings. Are they getting those things done in a timely fashion? Background checks, drug and alcohol screens, things along those lines. To the youth records. And so looking at are the children, when they're going on furloughs, signed in and out properly? Are their incident reports completed the same day? And that kind of thing. Is daily log notes signed off on by staff and they're filled out properly? Are there gaps in our paperwork where information should have been written? Changes have to be properly documented. So once we add new medications, we have to go back and document additional notes on our intake paperwork that shows medications have been added to that youth. So when licensing comes in, they're either coming in to do an inspection that's scheduled and planned, or they're going to do a surprise inspection, which they're allowed to do at any given time. The graveyard shift, or the 11 to 7 shift, knows that we have night supervision that comes in to monitor them. They come and watch them do their job. And so they're making sure that we're doing our bed checks like we say we're going to be doing them, that we have enough staff, that we say we have enough staff for our ratio, and that staff are doing the adequate 15-minute bed checks and documenting it properly, not documenting ahead of time, which would be fraud. And so we also have allegations. Sometimes a kid might make an allegation, or a parent make an allegation that staff did something wrong to a kid, and so sometimes licensing would come in and they would have special investigators that come in to evaluate that process as well. Then there's a thing called corrective action plans. If we've been found at fault in any way, then we would have a corrective action plan. Sometimes I would just have a corrective action plan internally when I see that maybe staff were not doing what they needed to do. But we can also have a corrective action plan from a licensing inspection, and then I would have to say how we're going to resolve that problem in the future and not repeat that behavior. That would be the same thing for a staff with an individual corrective action plan. And then ongoing staff training and support. They often look at, are we doing our training? Are we keeping it up to date? And so I know staff were kind of surprised last year in the fall, and recently this month in January, when I said, look, you're going to get your training when we say you've got your training scheduled, or you're not on the schedule. Well, why do we say that? Because it's part of this TC3 process. It's part of what's required for us with checks and balances on what's expected of our agency through the state and what they're requiring us to do. So let's kind of go over kind of like that little bit of art to the right. You know, we get feedback from our CQI. We get feedback from licensing. We get feedback, then we take that feedback and put it into some input and then some comments, so we get to kind of talk back and forth and have that dialogue of how we're going to change things and how we're going to improve things. Then we're going to review that to see if it was effective. So based on the feedback, we provide input of how we're going to make changes. We comment and get some commentary from other people to kind of help us make those changes. We review whether we were successful or not, and if we were successful with the changes that we needed to make, we of course achieve success. So with TC3, from a supervision standpoint, children are always in sight and sound. We can hear them, we can see them. There is active supervision, eyes up. Phones are put away. Staff can see and have full mindful attention of the kiddos. We have safe transitions both inside and outside, warning the kiddos, hey guys, in 10 minutes we're going to do this. Hey guys, in 5 minutes we're going to do that. That's part of the supervision process. Ratios, correct number of children per staff. That's very, very important. No gaps during breaks or transitions. So if you've got to go potty, you're going to make sure that there's enough people watching your group so your group is not unsupervised. And you don't walk off from your group. You make sure that you completely verbally look at another staff member in the eye and tell them you need to go to the restroom. They need to help watch your group, and that way there's enough coverage. And sometimes that means merging up several groups together to provide that coverage. You don't take into consideration that when we have a cook in house, you can actually have the children go into the dining room area where one staff member already is who's a direct care staff member, and then that cook or that housekeeper or that somebody else can still count in that ratio to watch kiddos. Although they're not providing full care, they're just monitoring them while they're doing something. And so it's important that you, if you go to the restroom or you do something, you do it quickly so you can get back to your group. And that's important with ratios. Health and safety, making sure that we're clean and hazard-free is important. Hand washing after we go to the restroom, hand washing regularly, and making sure that injuries and concerns are always reported right away. Those incident reports reported right away. With paperwork and monitoring and improvement on paperwork, we need to make sure that the children are signed in and signed out correctly when they go on a furlough. We make sure that we ID those people properly and make a copy of their ID. We need to do incident reports and completed the same day that an incident has occurred. We keep the client log notes initialed and signed regularly. And when we're filling out intake paperwork, we do that thoroughly. We don't write I don't know or no or unknown. We need to leave it blank so we can go back and fill that back in. And of course, with staff, paperwork, a big deal for staff and for the agency. One of the biggest ongoing things that we battle is, do staff turn in their proper driver's licenses? They've been exchanged out for updated ones, proper licenses if your license has been renewed in another way, not just your personal license like your driver's license, but your food handler's card or your CPR and first aid card, and like I have an administrator's license myself that I have to renew, and so that would be there as well. But making sure that all of the training is up to date. Training is a huge deal with minimum standards and with TC3. So that's why I'm being a real stickler on training, and staff have to participate as it is assigned to them. And so you won't be on the schedule if you don't get your training done. That's how that kind of works. And so these are things that all matter when monitoring comes in to evaluate the agency. And so we want to make sure that we know how to answer those questions that are brought up to us when licensing does an investigation. How can staff be more accountable? Staff accountability. We got to know the policies and procedures. Not only have you read policies and procedures when you got hired, we often turn around and then train on those policies and procedures. So we turn around and do job shadowing, and we talk about those policies and procedures frequently in training and during staff meetings. And so always, if you don't understand something, follow up with the procedures of why we do things. So ask a supervisor. Usually, if it's going to be kind of like a direct care call, on a functionality question, you could ask Nicole, you could ask Lisa, just to kind of follow up with how, why we do the things the way we do them. Ask questions when you're unsure before you do something. Sometimes kids will say, well, Miss Sheila said, or Miss Lisa said, or this is not how Sarah does it, that kind of thing. No, don't ever take things at face value. You can always call and ask one of us, hey, did you say this? Is this how we do things? And so I appreciate that. Some of the new staff recently were texting me, hey, Miss Sheila, is this true? I don't think that's true. And so I think that's important, and I appreciate that you reach out to us and be like, hey, I'm not sure about this. Is this something that we do? Especially when you're a new staff, or when we're making all these changes and you're an older staff and we're doing things differently. It can be quite confusing. Anytime you have a concern about a coworker or about a situation in the shelter, please report it immediately to a supervisor. And so if there's a supervisor on the property, get to that supervisor live and report it to them, and make sure that we have a concern. Remember, we never do anything alone with the kiddos. Remember that we don't do restraints. Remember that we don't sit and play on our cell phones. And then we don't just walk out of the building and hang outside on a break. We don't do all these kind of things. So when you're seeing things that that bring concern to your mind and be like, oh, I just don't think that's right, then that's important. Also, when staff are just ignoring kids, when kids are in a group and you can just tell that a staff member is just ignoring them and not interacting with them, if that's a consistent behavior with a coworker, then that needs to be brought to somebody's attention. Or when you see a coworker just blatantly not following our rules, regulations, and policies and procedures. And so it's not about being a friend of your coworker, it's about being a part of the team. And when you have one bad player that has poor integrity and doesn't care, it affects the entire group. And so staff accountability is important. And that's the big thing with this TC3 thing. I really like that. One of the things that I took away from the TC3 training or workshop was doing the right thing every day is so quality of care is easy. Quality of care is easy because we are doing what we're supposed to do. And so it's important to tell a supervisor right away if we worry about how the children's quality of care is being impacted. Our children always come first. Safety always comes first, and everyone plays a part in that. So that's why that last button there says teamwork. We could not do this alone. it takes a village. Do you see that picture of everybody putting their hand in and saying, I'm in, I'm in? We all need to be in for the quality of care for our kids. We all need to be in for the compassionate care of our kids. We all need to be in for the nurturing care of our kids. And we all need to be in for the safe care of all of our kids. And so that's why TC3 changes were brought forward so we can make a huge impact on these kids' lives, providing them stability in foster care and helping the overall family get back on track. So what are our key takeaways? Our key takeaways are T3C is a required process. Trauma-informed care does not mean permissive care. Documentation protocols protect staff and the youth. Consistency keeps everyone safe. Consistency through everything we do keeps the shelter running smoothly, and it helps the children adapt to foster care, and it helps them regulate, and it makes our shifts easier as well. This is a time for question and support. Understanding who's on call for what, supervisors on contact. Usually Sheila and Lisa and Rhonda are on call for intakes. Usually after hours, it is Sheila and Lisa unless they are both out of town. If it's for activities for the kids or behavioral issues of a kiddo, visitation, things along those lines. Sometimes those are calls to case managers. If it's a kid who's really struggling with their behavior and you can't get them to function, and TBRI is not working for you or that child at the moment, we'll be able to go back and look at the cameras and see what was going on with that kid and what kind of efforts were made. But sometimes support staff can come in. Whoever that on-call worker is, they might be able to come in and help mediate that out with you. Not do it for you, not take over your group, but mediate that out with you. But we are going to look to see what efforts you made to help resolve the issue prior to us coming in the first place, because we want to make sure that we don't take away your power. Anytime you get an administrator to step in and override your actions, you take away your power, and that makes you less than in front of the children. We don't want to do that. Policy. We train all of our staff on policy. And policy changes and grows, and it's kind of like an evolution. Every time we have to add something new, because with TC3 changes and the changes through government and leadership, we are constantly having to do revisions of policy. So we'll constantly do updated changes to policy, but you're always welcome to ask for a policy procedure manual, and you can look through that again. On-call leadership, you can talk to like Nicole for scheduling issues, for activities ideas, for outings, usually for, like I said, intakes and placement calls. It's going to be Sheila or Lisa. If it's a policy question, you might call Sheila or Lisa because they're the ones going to help you with that. You can also contact the case managers if it deals with the kid, like visitation, school, appointments, medical, anything that deals with the quality of care of the youth and questions about their services that they get from us. That's going to be a case manager call. Of course, if you needed to talk to somebody about your time, your vacation, your being paid for vacation or insurance or things like that, that's going to be our accountant, Miss Erin. And then, of course, Lisa and Rhonda will, and Miss Nicole always will follow up to you on training needs. Our staff meetings and staff trainings are usually mandatory. And so we usually try to be accommodating and have one in the morning and one in the afternoon for those who have dual roles and dual jobs or go to school. And so please be aware that these are part of our job descriptions, is attending those things. That's a mandatory situation. Trainings will always be notated on a monthly basis and need to be turned in each month as they are assigned. So those are some important things that we need to be mindful of as well. Thank you so much for reviewing this training with me. If you have any questions, let me know. We will be updating you through our quarterly trainings that we do with TBRI as well.